like formally, I guess the animation is supposed to help us do the code switch.
Yeah.
A bit. Do you want to talk about that? And then we can just get to like how the characters. But I think it's, especially in these first few episodes, like it's just brilliant how you're showing like this character's breakdown in a way, inability to navigate all these things. Anyway, but let's just talk about the animation as code switching and then.
Yeah, I mean, I was, the thing that made me feel like, okay, this should be an animated show, because I've been making live action stuff, but I felt that my initial idea was that the characters would actually look totally different when they were inside and when they were outside.
Yeah, I read that.
And then everyone that I worked with was like, this will become genuinely confusing. Like no one, like people will just lose track of who's who, and I said, fair enough. But it actually turned into something that I think was a bit more elegant, which is, well, what part of you would you hide to go out? You know, you watch a beard become a mustache, you watch curly hair get straightened, you know, these things that I kind of like watched my mom and my sister battle with a straightener, you know, like these things, these parts of you, and you know, I felt as a kid, especially after, you know, in that time, there was a bit of like, well, we're gonna be smiley if we're in the front yard, and then if we're inside, we're gonna be more who we are.
Yeah.
And so that was a big seed for this should be an animated thing. And what also excited me about that idea is that I think everybody does it. I think that, you know, to an extent, every culture does it, you know, for different reasons. And I also just think every person does it. Every human on earth has something where they go, well, you know, that thing that's happening with me, if everyone else saw that, it would be a problem. And I loved how universal like that invitation could be. And I think that's been some of the great feedback to the show, has just been people who really get it, even if they've never heard Arabic spoken before, or if they're not, you know, just the whitest white guy has been like, dude, I relate. And I think that's exciting to pair that with how, you know, incredibly specific the show gets.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like really appreciate is when your friend, not you, Rumi's friend, who the African American character.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Well, Chris Red's the actor,
Yeah.
and he plays the character Marcus.
Marcus. Okay,
Yeah.
so we see Marcus when they're both visiting their uncles in jail.
Yeah.
And Marcus is code switching there because his uncle has been incarcerated since the 80s. And
Yeah.
so they're just kind of locked in time. And then we see him later on, and you're like, oh, not you, because I'm sorry to do this
Oh,
to
no,
you.
yeah.
The character, because you're voicing
Yes,
the character.
of course.
Rumi is like, oh my God, I didn't know your mom and dad were like Oprah and Bill Cosby, right? And so we see this moment, and it's this distancing that Marcus has from Rumi, because on one hand, he's code switching to protect himself from being so othered, the way that Rumi suddenly is othered. So, and then that whole episode is just about Rumi trying to code switch in all of these environments, which he can partly do, but then obviously can't do it all. So you just talk a little bit more about like, you know, how did you even conceive of that? Because that's, I think, a rare insight into the pressures, the burdens, the, like you said, the people with the 20 years, like the breakdown, like the mental fatigue that comes from having to code switch in order to assimilate, and you really can't ever fully do it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that relationship between the two of them because, you know, in a way, even just a quick line from Marcus of like, oh yeah, my uncle's been here since the 80s, you know, because he was near a guy who was smoking weed.
Yeah.
It's just, in one line, you kind of go, oh, whoa, like, that's, like, it's almost like you watch this kid Rumi and you're like, welcome to the conversation, you know, like, welcome to what's been going on. And I think that dynamic between the two of them, which we also get into, you know, we actually made 16 episodes at once, so there's this second season, and we kind of go even deeper with some of that, you know, relationship. And we have a whole episode with, you know, whatever, it's not this season, but a whole episode of Marcus's family. But, you know, that friendship was important because it felt very real to what I think a lot of people were experiencing, which was, you know, black folks kind of saying, you know, hey, I see what you're kind of going through, and, you know, systemically, you know, the deck is still way more stacked against them, you know, and so there is a connection, but then there's also still a distance. Yeah.
And so one of the things, so that's like what Marcus' character is like, that his uncle's stuck in time. And then one of the things I read that you said was that when you initially conceived of the show, like you said 2019, you were, in a way, I guess we all were hoping that this would still be like snapshot of a time versus feeling so relevant and so pertinent today. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this was supposed to be a time capsule. I didn't think that, the dad literally is walking around saying, "We're #1 happy family USA, let us stay in the country." That almost feels like something that someone's probably saying at the airport right now. And I think we never could have thought that. And I think the closer we got to this release date and seeing the way that college students have been targeted, seeing the way that people are, being interrogated at the border, whether they're citizens or not, that conversation kind of happening, at the heat at which it's happening, and and honestly, things feel dangerous. I'm very upset that this show hits the zeitgeist currently. Yeah. You usually want to hit the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
Yeah.
That's not what this was for.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a line that you said, I know I'm quoting you a lot, this is what I do, but that I think you talk about, it's the artist is prescient. So the headlines do one thing, artists do another thing, right? So our artists are always ahead of things. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah, I think I was talking about doing Poor Things with Yorgos, and it basically what was interesting is that it kind of comes out and it's really it's a story about a woman, trying to gain control over her own destiny, and it's obviously done in this like really late 1800s, heightened surrealist world. And so what I was saying was that film could have looked like a reaction to the openness around the Me Too conversation, but I think Yorgos chased that book down probably 10 years prior or something like that. He'd been trying to make it, and I think we had a very similar thing happen, with stuff we were writing on Rami and obviously making Mo. When we talked about a Palestinian family, while we were pitching that show also in 2019, people go, "Oh, Pakistani?" Like they didn't know what we were talking about, and so the way that everything kind of catches up to the seeds that we wanted to plant, and I see that with a lot of my friends' work, where they're talking about something and then it's okay, now it's in, and now people are ready to to get into it, and you see it in a lot of when you're trying to look at things from I think a more emotional place, you tend to kind of see it before it ends up as a news headline.
Yeah, and I think the best artists are just like they're already seeing things, and then sometimes when we see works of film or television, we don't realize the audience doesn't realize the production, like how long it takes.
How long? Yeah.
So then when it lands, we're like, oh my god, they were on time, or like, but then actually like the vision and the feeling, like you're saying, had to happen a lot. But if you're just in touch with it,
if you're in touch with it, but it's interesting. I don't want to give too much power to I don't think we're soothsayers. Yeah, I don't know if it speaks to the power of the artist or to how fucked up the system is. I'm not sure. Yeah, like how slow and just muddy and impossible it is for anything to it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.